everybody, and welcome to Project HR, a podcast dedicated to building better workplaces. Project HR is brought to you every Thursday by Projections and IRI Company. IRI helps organizations navigate workplace challenges, improve employee engagement and productivity, manage labor relations, and implement effective communication strategies to achieve their goals. For more information, you can visit IRI online at iriconsultants.com and Projections at projectionsinc.com. I am Jennifer Oraquad, Director of Business Development for IRI, and your host for today's episode of Project HR. Now, as leaders, we strive to motivate our teams to accomplish goals and carry on in the face of roadblocks and distractions. But what if the person we should be striving to motivate first is ourselves? Today, my guest is Ayelet Fishbach, psychologist and behavioral scientist. She's a professor at the University of Chicago, and she's the author of a new book that addresses this very concept, titled Get It Done: Surprising Lessons from the Science of Motivation. Ayelet, thanks so much for joining me here today on Project HR.
Thanks for having me, Jennifer. It's a pleasure.
So your book begins with a reference to the adventures of Baron Munchausen and the idea of pulling oneself up by their own hair, something you've had to do throughout your life. So when did you decide to turn this skill of yours into a book?
Well, I decided to turn my knowledge of motivation science into a book. And you refer to the story that started my journey and my thinking about motivation science, the story of the Baron Munchausen. And if listeners are unfamiliar with it, this fictional character is doing the impossible things. And the story that I refer to is when he's riding his horse into a swamp and he's starting to sink down. And with no other way to pull himself out of the swamp, he basically grabs his hair and is pulling himself out of the swamp. And also the horse that he's riding on, like he's holding the horse with his legs, and this way both of them are coming out. and clearly that's physically impossible, but such a nice metaphor for what we do when we pull ourselves out of a stressful situation or out of bed in the morning and basically motivating ourselves. So I thought to start there and basically describe the findings for motivation science and what we discovered for how people can motivate themselves. And this field has been growing exponentially in recent years. So there were just so many treasures. And in my book, I thought to provide a framework to understanding what do we do when we motivate ourselves.
Yeah, nice. So in general, what do you see as the main things that people get wrong when they try to motivate themselves to achieve something? Are there common pitfalls here?
There are. Let me refer to one thing that we see a lot, which is people are hoping that they will be a different person than the person that they are now. So this is the decision that tomorrow I'm going to do something very different from what I've done today, because tomorrow I'm going to be a different person. In my next job, I'm going to be a different person. Next week, I would like to run 3 miles every morning, right? Like this week, I don't feel like doing this at all.
Right.
And planning for a different person than you are is usually a mistake. Also thinking that in the future you will be driven by what's important and not what is rewarding and intrinsically motivating at the moment is a mistake.
So your book, Get It Done, provides a framework for theoretical action. What was your process for building this framework?
Oh, it was like organizing a very messy room. Okay, so you just you look at everything, okay, and you try to put it in buckets, okay, kind of on the shelves, and this strategy seems like it tackles the same problem as the other strategy, and so what is exactly the general organization here? And there was a framework that kind of emerged from the science, which was very beautiful almost for me to discover that there are interventions that help people set a goal. There are interventions that, by interventions I refer to things that we do to ourselves. There are interventions that help people get from here to there, so monitoring progress and learning from feedback. The third category are interventions that help us juggle multiple goals and set priorities and seeking compromises. And the fourth category is leveraging social support and everything that we do to make sure that the people around us are helping, or at least not standing in the way. And so it came out in my mind pretty beautiful, like how all this science was
Yeah.
organized.
Yeah, I love how readable the book is. It's very engaging, full of stories and examples. And because the book is based on motivational science, I'm curious how much of the book's content and structure was formulated based on that motivational science, and in this case, reading and absorbing the information in the book.
Well, everything is from motivation science. Some of the science, the authors, the researchers that were discovering the findings may have not thought that they were doing motivation science, but later on we realized that this is about how to motivate people. A lot of it is just a very large group of scientists that are interested in how to help people thrive.
All right, I'm going to take a quick sponsorship break right now, but when we return, we'll get into the thick of how this process works and how it can help you reach your goals. So stay with us.
The relationships you have with your employees are critical to the success of your business. In today's ever-evolving political and economic climate, those relationships can also be the most vulnerable. Employee dissatisfaction can lead to union organizing activity, potentially disrupting operations, leading to costly lawsuits and negative publicity for your company. The IRI Labor Relations Consulting team brings with it a wide range of expertise, from former labor management executives to human resources professionals, and even award-winning communication experts. We'll help you create an environment where employees feel valued. Our goal is simple. We help your company thrive while creating a positive working environment. Get started today with a personalized labor relations readiness assessment from IRI. We'll provide you with a customized roadmap and the resources you need to succeed. Visit us at iriconsultants.com to learn more.
I'm back with Ayelet Fishbach, psychologist and behavioral scientist, University of Chicago professor, and author of Get It Done: Surprising Lessons from the Science of Motivation. So let's talk about the framework you've built. Can you give us a brief overview of the elements, and then we can dig deeper on the individual steps?
Absolutely. The first element is setting a goal. That is deciding where you want to go. Okay, deciding what you want to
Mhm.
achieve in a particular context in your life in general. What's important for you? Often it's also involved like how much, how soon, what exactly you want to do. The second element is getting there, and that involves looking at what you have done and looking at what you still have to do. So, monitoring the progress. It also involves taking in feedback, both the positive and the negative.
Mm.
The third element is juggling multiple goals. And as it turned out, we never just want to do one thing. Okay? We always pursue several goals simultaneously. And so there are many strategies that help people decide how to prioritize their goals and how to make sure that they are efficient in pursuing them. And then the very last element is social support. And what we have found many years ago as a field is that we as humans, we are social animals. We work with others, we work in the presence of others. And if the people in your life are helping and supporting your goals, you have a much better chance. And so strategies involving that.
So you began with choosing your goal. This is really where so many initiatives fall flat. I mean, is that fair to say? What are the important elements to keep in mind when it comes to goal setting so that you don't fail?
Yes, you're right. Many of the goals that we set we will never get us very far. Also, sometimes people set the wrong goals. And I
Mm.
actually start writing about how to set a goal by giving an example for a goal that might not be right for everyone in every situation. And it's the goal to reach to the summit of Mount Everest. And it's a very motivating goal. It actually has all
Mhm.
the elements for a successful goal. Okay, it has a very clear target. Okay? You know
Mhm.
whether you've made it. It's not a means to another goal. Okay, and so you like if your goal is to get to the top of Mount Everest, that's the thing that you want to achieve. You don't want to do it so that you can then climb another mountain.
Mhm.
Uh, there are great incentives. And probably for mountaineers, these incentives don't matter as much because they're intrinsically motivated. They want to do it for the sake of doing it. So, very motivating goal, and yet I give it as an example for a goal that might not be right for everyone under every circumstances. And I tell the story of a group of mountaineers who were trying to get to the summit of Mount Everest when the weather was bad.
Mm.
As it turned out, as much as it's hard to get to the summit, it's even harder to make it back. And many of them did not make it back because they made the wrong calculation that they can do it when the weather is bad. So you need to choose the goal that's right for you. Think about extreme diets or like extreme sports with sport injuries, or investing in the wrong relationship. You need to think about the content. Is that the right goal?
Mm.
And then the elements that I mentioned with Mount Everest should work. So
Yeah,
make it intrinsically motivating and
for
not a
sure.
chore.
So help me out a little bit here on the concept of do and do not goals.
Yeah, thank you. Do goals are approach goals, are the things that you want to achieve. Do not goals are avoidance goals, are the things that you want to avoid.
Mm-hmm.
As it turned out, do not goals are much harder to pursue. They are more likely to be seen like chores, okay, so you're not enthusiastic about them.
Mm.
Also, when you are trying to avoid something, the act of trying to avoid it brings to mind the thing that you're trying to avoid. And let me give it an example.
Mhm.
Daniel Wagner, many years ago, ran a study in which he asked students not to think about white bears.
Mhm.
And I try not to think about white bears, right? Like the mere ask brings to mind white bears. How do you know if you're successful? Well, you ask yourself, am I still thinking about white bears? And oops, I just failed. Okay, it's like
Right?
try not to think about your ex. Okay, or trying not to think about cigarettes. Okay, like
Mhm.
it brings to mind the thing that you're trying to avoid. On top of it, do not goals often elicit what we refer to as psychological reactance. You want to do it exactly because you are not allowed to do it.
Mhm.
And so, do not goals, avoidance goals tend to not be great in the long run. They
Mhm.
have one advantage, which is they seem urgent. Okay.
Right?
So,
Sure.
if you need to act immediately, okay, telling yourself, oh, don't do it, okay, like don't drink another whatever glass of wine, that might be effective. But if you think about the long term, it's
Mhm.
better to think about drinking and eating healthy food than avoiding the unhealthy.
Sure. So it's all about the sustainability. Now, the next step in the framework falls under the header of keep pulling. Can you explain this part of the process in a little more detail?
So when you set a goal and you know where you're going, and let's say that it's intrinsically motivating and exciting and you want to go there, there's still a way to go. Okay. And how you monitor your progress really matters. What we find is that at the beginning, it is better to look back at what you've achieved. And looking back makes you feel more committed, makes you feel that it's more feasible. After the midpoint, after you've done something for a while, you might look ahead and see how much is still missing.
Mhm.
So, to give you an example, when we surveyed employees in an advertising company in Seoul, in South Korea, we found that when we asked them to look back at what they have achieved this year, they felt more committed. They liked their role more. Okay, they were happier with their job than when we asked them to look ahead and what they still need to do this year. Interestingly, when we asked them to look ahead at what is still missing, they had higher level of aspiration. That is, they were already thinking about the next one. They were already thinking about what they're going to do once they complete everything that they need to complete this year. In other studies, we found that for beginners, it's really better to have them look at what they have achieved, and for experts, they should look ahead at what is still missing.
Mhm. And I love that you addressed the middle problem because it seems like in all the things the middle is the challenge. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Exactly, right. So at the beginning you're excited because you just started something, and you look back and you see that like a week ago I had nothing and I already made that progress over the last week. toward the end you are almost there, and this is motivating. And in general, with progress, people get more motivated. So we see with loyalty program that as consumers make progress, let's say that you have a loyalty program where you need to buy 10 cups of coffee to get a free cup of coffee. I think as you make progress, you're more likely to stick to this program and you will get your free reward. And so we see again like this increase in motivation, but in the middle, there is no enthusiasm for the beginning, and there is
Mhm.
no sense that I'm almost achieving
Mhm.
my goal. And this is where motivation is kind of low. And so,
Mhm.
what you should do is probably keep your goals short. Yeah.
Mhm.
A weekly exercise goal is better than a monthly exercise goal, because a week has a shorter middle. Okay? You're
Mhm.
less likely
Mhm.
to lose your stamina. We ran studies that found that people are in the middle are losing their motivation to work hard and also to just do a good job. Okay? They were literally cutting corners
Mhm.
in the middle of the task. And I say literally because the task was to cut shapes on a piece of paper, and we gave them a pair of scissors and these shapes. And they cut the first shape very neatly, also the last
Mhm.
one. In the
Mhm.
middle, they were cutting the shapes corners.
Mhm.
So it was quite literal how we invest less in the goal, and we also don't do such a great job. So
Mhm.
keep meals short.
So, what about the idea of competing goals? You addressed that in this framework. Can you share with us a little bit about what's involved in competing goals and that part of the process?
We always have competing goals. We always want to achieve several things at the same time.
Mhm.
And so what do? Well, first we need to just make a decision. Are we trying to prioritize these two or more goals, or are we trying to find the right balance? Are we trying to compromise? And the strategy that we will choose depends on whether we are trying to say like this is more important for me than something else. Okay, maybe eating healthily is more important for me than my morning donut routine. Yeah, or are we trying to seek the right compromise? Okay, for many people that would be a work and family. Okay,
Mhm.
how do I arrange my life so that I can get both?
Mhm.
Uh, if we are prioritizing, that is a self control problem. And now we use self control strategies to help us stick with a goal that's higher priority and put aside the one that is low priority, which becomes a temptation. If we are trying to compromise, okay, to find the right balance, and now we are looking for what we refer to as multi-final means or activities that help us achieve more than one goal. Okay, so how can I, maybe uh, commute to work by bike so I get my exercise and I get to work at the same time? How I maybe bring my lunch from home
Mhm.
so that I save money and time, and also maybe eat healthier food, and all kind of solutions that basically allow people to achieve more than one goal at the same time. Even like the daycare that is close to the workplace is often this multi-final solution.
Mhm.
It's like I refer to this as feeding two birds with one scone, because I don't like that. I don't like killing birds. Okay.
Right, I like it. So tell me, what role does self-control play when we are dealing with competing goals?
So self control is critical when we prioritize, okay? When we want to put something below another thing. And self control requires that we see a self control problem and that we then know how to battle the temptation that we identified. And I refer to this as a two-step process: first identifying and then battling, because most of our everyday temptations, if we just think about them in isolation, there is no problem. Okay, they being
Mhm.
late to work or even skip work one day, that will not influence my life in any significant way. Eating one cookie will not destroy my healthy eating resolution. Losing my temper once is not going to destroy my relationship. And so to see a problem, you really need to think about engaging with this tempting behavior many times. You really need to think about what is going to be the impact on my relationship if I lose my temper 10 times this month, okay, or this year. And so this is a strategy that helps people just see the problem. There is a nice study by my colleague here, Abby Sussman, that found that when people think about exceptional expenses, these things that you only buy rarely, like a bottle of champagne or a gift for a friend, if they think about them as part of a pattern, if they think about buying 10 of these, they realize that they should not overspend, okay? That there is a temptation here. And so this is about identification. And then there is battling the temptation. And what my research finds is that the best way to help people battle the temptation is to give them an early warning. It's a bit like the vaccine model that we are now all very familiar with. It's giving a small quantity,
Right.
okay, preparing your body in this particular example, your mind to battle the temptation. So now when we tell people that they are going to be tempted by social media, this is something we did with students. They plan to invest more hours studying. Okay, they realize that it's going to be hard to focus on my homework. There's going to be all these temptations, and they are more prepared to fight them off.
Makes sense. Makes sense. All right, it's time for another quick break, but we'll be right back after this. You're listening to the Project HR podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Oraqua, and my guest today is Ayelet Fishbach, University of Chicago professor and author of Get It Done, Surprising Lessons from the Science of Motivation. And we are back. The last step in this framework addresses the need for social support. Can you set that up for us? What does that mean?
Yes, we work with other people and we work in the presence of other people. That means that for most of our important goals, we are not doing them by ourselves. Okay? Whether it's a project at work, or starting a company, or starting a family, or even working as a neighborhood, or as society, as a country, we do important things with other people. And so we need to think about how exactly we coordinate our efforts with others, how we divide the work, how do we make sure that there's not too much social loafing, that is, we don't give up on the goal or disengage because we assume that someone else will pick up the slack. And then other times we work on our personal goals in the presence of others. Okay, we go to a gym class, okay, and there are other people that are exercising there. We go to work, and I can see what other people around me are doing. We go to school, and we see other students, and finding the right group of people to surround you is absolutely critical. It is much easier to do a good job when the people around you are also working hard, are also investing in a goal.
So when we talk about social support at work, so we're working within our teams, how does that work? Do we enlist everyone in the goals? How can that your framework apply to a work situation?
Yes, absolutely. So let's start with the goals that we are pursuing with others, okay, which is basically the teamwork, okay, like the team project. The main risk there is that people are not going to do their best because other people are there to do the work. And we all know that in work meetings, we don't think about the issues as hard as we think about them when we are by ourselves. Okay, the reason is that someone else is there and they can do the thinking while we daydream. And one solution is to make sure that we always identify individuals' contributions. Okay, we always know how much Jennifer contributed, how much Ayelet contributed, so we don't lose sight on the impact that we personally have on the goal. Okay, when pulling a rope together, people don't work very hard because it's really impossible to tell whether your pulling did anything for the group. When generating ideas, if we can find a way to make sure that ideas come with a name, then we can also guarantee that we are not going to procrastinate too
Makes
much.
sense. Yeah, that makes sense. And I've always heard that making your goals public can help us reach them. Is that true at work as well? If we're setting a goal, should we shout to the rooftops that this is where we're going?
Probably so. And I say probably so because the risk is that we often set optimistic goals. And I encourage being optimistic with your goals because I think that when you set to do something that you might not achieve, that is challenging, you have a better chance. And so the problem with making your goals public is that if you set them correctly, there's probably about 20% chance that you will not quite achieve the target that you set to achieve. And maybe you don't want to embarrass yourself by finish it after this deadline that you announced, or doing a little bit less than what you announced that you are going to do, in which case there are solutions. Okay, like you can say that you are hoping to finish it, announcing publicly you're hoping to finish it by the end of the week, but it might take another 3 days, or
Mm-hmm.
allow some
Mm-hmm.
mistake there because
Sure. That makes sense. That makes sense. So is this framework something that once we learn it, as a leader, can I pass it along to my individual team members?
I hope so. I hope that when the knowledge is there, when everybody's more thoughtful, then we talk about that, and we set an example. Okay, and being a leader is often just being in a position when other people are looking at you, and they see what you do, and you're the role model. Other times is how you guide people. Just to use my last example, as a leader, you can encourage people to set optimistic goals that will challenge them. And, maybe they only have 80% of achieving this exactly by the time that they set, but they are working harder. So,
Mhm,
yes.
mhm. Yeah, and there's definitely something to be said for stretch goals. Now, can this framework be applied to a group goal?
Many of the goals are group goals. So, absolutely, what we see with group goals is that we should really think seriously about coordination. So, I already talked about identifying individual contribution. Coordination implies that we don't all do the same amount of work, okay, at the same time. Actually, let me say it in a different way. It's like we could do the same amount of work, but it's not exactly the same work. Okay, like
Mm.
we don't want 10 cooks in the kitchen. Okay, so uh,
Mhm, right.
understanding what I do better, what you do better.
Mhm,
Let
mhm.
me refer to actually another study by Daniel Wegner. I guess the guy is on my mind today. He gave a memory task to married couples and to strangers. And he found that couples are doing much better in the memory test compared to strangers. And then he looked at why, what is exactly that they do. And it turned out that couples, they very intuitively decide on who's going to remember what. Okay, so like I care about movies. I'm going to remember the information about movies. You care about food, so you will remember the information about food, and so on. And the people are doing it quite intuitively and very effectively. And strangers, everybody is just trying to remember everything, and that doesn't work very well. Moving it to work to the extent that we have a team that like we worked with each other for a long time, we know each other well. That makes it easier to intuitively know. Well, I'm going to work on this aspect, and you're going to work on the other aspect, and we're not going to step on each other's toes.
So does the framework work better with a group? Is there an exponential benefit towards engaging in this process together? Like you referenced everybody's strengths and weaknesses. Is the framework actually better with a group?
Everything is better with a group. Okay, we are social animals. We are more motivated when we are with other people. Saying that, we might be in the wrong group. Okay, we might be working
Mm.
with people that are not helping, that don't share our values, and then you need to switch groups. You need to pull yourself. If I can go back to the Baron Munchausen,
Mm.
pull yourself to a different group. Okay, bring new people to your group or to your life so that you are in the group that motivates you.
So if our audience wants to find out more about you or about the Get It Done book, where can we go?
I hope the audience will be interested to read more and hear more about Get It Done. So the book is available everywhere, and you can also get more information on my website, which is ayeletfishbach.com.
Very nice. I want to let our audience know that those links will all be included in this episode's companion guide. So you need to be sure to unlock that today at projectionsinc.com/podcast. Right now, though, Ayelet, it is time for our lightning round questions. And these are questions I ask of every guest of the podcast. Are you ready?
Absolutely.
All right. So our first question is always a topic showdown. In this episode, we've been talking about the importance of motivational science in achieving goals. So in your opinion, which of these film characters displayed the most motivation in achieving their goals? Ripley in Alien or Elle Woods in Legally Blonde?
So this is an easy one for me because I only watched Legally Blonde.
Okay.
And Ellie Woods is highly motivated. So,
She is.
I will
right.
go with her.
Very good. All right. Next question. What is the best book that you've read recently?
Oh, can I say two?
Of course.
Most recently, I loved Crossroads by Jonathan Franzen and Writers and Lovers by Lily King. So highly recommend both.
All right. I've read other work of Jonathan Franzen. I need to pick that one up. So what's your favorite thing about the work that you do?
Oh, gosh, the writing. I think I love to write. There's like this organization that you get to when you write about science. So I'll go with that.
All right. Perfect. Well, it shines through for sure. What is the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
What the best piece of advice? The best piece of advice is to give advice, probably. And that is my former postdoc, Lauren S. Chris Winkler, told me that when you give advice, you are more motivated than when you receive advice. So I would go with that. Best piece of advice is just you give the advice.
Gotcha. All right. Last question. Who or what inspires you?
My children, I would say I have three of them. One is finishing med school, the other one is an astrophysicist, and my third is the two are girls. My third is a boy, is a 10-year-old, is absolutely a delightful child. So
nice.
Make me wake up with a smile in the morning.
I like that. Thanks so much for joining me today on this week's episode of Project HR.
Thank you for having me, Jennifer. That was so lovely.
So thanks to our listeners. Once again, this is your reminder to grab that companion guide for this episode at projectionsinc.com/podcast. If you'd like to be on Project HR or you know someone who would, feel free to email us at projecthr@projectionsinc.com. And last but certainly not least, remember that a new episode of Project HR drops every Thursday. Make sure you never miss an episode by subscribing to the podcast. Drop us a line, leave us a review, or give us a handful of stars wherever you get your content. That's it from me for now. Let's make it a great day at work.